it's horror. You couldn't even write a horror movie like this. No one would believe that it's possible.
We do know that they're being tortured. We do know of testimonies that they're being tortured, abused, violated.
I have to deal with my 2 kids waking up in the middle of the night screaming that we have terrorists at home and they're pointing their guns towards them.
I'll start with you. Tell me your first and last name, please.
Moshe Lavi, Moshe-Lavi.
And tell me who you're related to and how.
This is my brother-in-law, Omri Miran, who was taken hostage on October 7 from Kibbutz Nachaloz. He's married to my sister, Lishai Lavi.
Your name is?
My name is Dalia Kusnir, Dalia-Cusnir. Eitan and Yair Horn are both my brothers-in-law.
And so, to explain that to me, what's exactly the connection?
So, the brother in the middle, Amos, is my husband.
So these are your husband's brothers?
Exactly.
And your name?
I'm Liel Slifer, Leelleslifer. And this is my mom's cousin, Carmel Gott. We kind of grew up together. We're about the same age. And that's who I'm here on behalf of.
And so she's what to you if she's your mom's cousin?
She's really my mom's cousin's daughter. I mean, you know how everyone's a cousin?
Aunt figure to you,
No, we're 6 months apart. So we used to have like sleepovers together as kids. Yeah, we call her our cousin. I mean, we're all kind of cousins. Yeah.
So I'll have you each kind of start. We'll go down the road again. A little bit about your person's story on October 7th.
Yeah, so Omri was taken hostage on October 7. My entire immediate family lives on the Israel-Gaza border. I grew up in Sderot, which is a town, the biggest town in the Gaza envelope region. And my 2 sisters, one lives in Oraner with her family, which is a kibbutz, and the other in Kibbutz Nachaloz. Lishai lives with Omri. On October 7, I was in New York because I moved to New York in September and to the US 2 years ago. And so I wasn't with my family. Last time I was with them before the war was September 7 when I flew back to the US a month before. And so October 7 for the entire family in Israel was horrifying because they were all targeted in one way or another. But the most terrible story and event happened to my sister Lishai and Omri. For hours we lost contact with them. So the invasion started at 6:30 a.m. and we lost contact with them roughly 5 hours later when they just told us that they're about to lose battery, their phone is running out of battery, they lost electricity. They sent us a photo of their 2 girls, Ronnie and Alma, playing with the family dog Mojo. And then we lost contact with them for the next 10 hours or so. At the beginning we assumed, all right, they lost connection, the battery ran out. But as the hours passed, we realized what is engulfing in Israel. And of course, my family knew it firsthand because they all could hear gunshots or follow it firsthand from the news. And later on that day, my mother received a Facebook message saying that Lishai and the 2 girls survived and they were rescued, but that Omri was taken hostage. During that time period, Hamas terrorists barged into their home. They used a teenager from the kibbutz, Tomer, to lure him to open the door. They opened the door, of course, to save Tomer's life. But Tomer was later executed by Hamas. He was 17 years old. His mother was murdered that day as well, and so was his mother's partner. for hours, Omri and Lishai and the girls were held at gunpoint in their home, which was ravaged. They were abused. And then they were grouped with another family, the Dan family, whose daughter Mayan was murdered that day, 18 years old. And this entire ordeal was live streamed on Facebook of the Dan families, the mother of the family. We were not aware of it at the time, so we did not know this is live streamed on Facebook, but it was, we discovered it later on. And around, in the afternoon hours, Omri was separated from Lishai. He was taken hostage alongside Tzachi, Dan, and Judith and Natalie Ranan. Before he was violently taken, Lishai told them that she loves him, that she'll take care of the girls, and ask him not to be a hero because they're waiting for him to return. Ronnie, my niece, 2.5 now, tried to run to him, but my sister stopped her in time. And ever since, they haven't seen Omri. Luckily, that evening, around 5:30 p.m., Lishai and the girls who were rescued, they were instructed to stay in the house or else they'll be shot and killed. But they were rescued eventually by the IDF, luckily survived, luckily not taken. And my parents were rescued, and so was my other sister and her family. So luckily everyone survived. But Omri is still in Gaza, and we haven't heard from him ever since. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about their story?
Yes, so Yair lives on kibbutz Nir Oz, which is a very small community, less than a mile from the border with Gaza, and Eitan lives in Kfar Saba, which is a small city near Tel Aviv, the same place where I live. Eitan was visiting Yair for that weekend. The truth is that my husband was invited to go to stay with them over the weekend as well, but we had other plans, luckily, so it was just the two of them. On October 7th at 6:30 a.m., we woke up from the siren. This is not so normal where I live, so we know what to do. We took the kids, we ran to the safe room, we closed the door, and then first thing was calling them to see if they're okay. Yair has this joke that we should never worry about him because they're so close to the border with Gaza that all the rockets are just going through from above. So we called them anyway. They didn't answer, but they texted us that they have sirens as well, and they're sitting in the safe room, and they're together. After 10 minutes, we were able to leave the safe room, so we came back home, planning on going back to sleep. It was Saturday. But we just opened the news for a second just to see what's going on. How come we have sirens near Tel Aviv? And then we started seeing all those horrible scenes of those pickup trucks full of terrorists and the invasion of the kibbutzim. And we looked at the TV screen and we see the path, you know, the garden around the kibbutz, that we know this place, and now people are shooting all over, and we try to understand what kind of what's going on. So we once again called them. They didn't pick up the phone. They just texted us, and every time it was the same message: still in the safe room, everything's okay. It went on for an hour. At 7:30 a.m. we got the last message from them. The images on TV got even worse all the time, and we heard some things of burning houses and killing people and taking them hostages, and they didn't answer. So I tried to kind of stay optimistic, and I told my husband that it's okay. I guess they ran out of battery, or they don't have electricity, so they won't have, maybe, I don't know, like signal or stuff like this. After a few hours, my husband was he had to do something, so he said, you know what, I'm taking the car and I'm driving there. Then, of course, I stopped him and I told him that according to what we're watching on TV, I mean, if he's going to drive there, he's not going to be able to come back. And it's complicated enough not knowing what's going on with Eitan and Yair, so he stayed home. For the rest of the day, we were crazy trying to understand what's going on. And then at 8:30 p.m., we got a phone call from an army officer saying that they're going house by house trying to rescue or take out survivors, and they're standing at Yair's house and they're not there. That was it. They're not there. For the next few days, we tried to go over all those videos, trying to see if we see something or look at, I don't know, the pictures of the bodies and all those horrible things. We knew nothing. The first time we got a real sign of life was on November 25th, when there was this hostage deal and part of the women from the same community came back. So they told us that they're really hostages and that they're there.
Before I have you talk about Carmel, I see the emotion in your face as you listen to their stories. What is it for you? What's going through your head?
I just think about all the families and the horror of what happened on that day. All the stories out of the music festival, and I think a lot about, little baby Kfir, who turned a year old in captivity. And it doesn't get easier every time you talk about this. It's horror. You couldn't even write a horror movie like this. No one would believe that it's possible. And yet it happened, and it was live streamed on Facebook. And it is just one of the most painful events I think that our world has seen.
And people are denying it.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but yes, people are denying it, and it's unbelievable to me. And not only denying it, blaming Israel,
justifying it, denying it.
It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. When you've seen videos of folks ripping down these posters of your family members, can you try to describe what that has felt like?
I think it's very painful to see it. It's hurtful. It's a form of abuse. At the same time, I think it helped actually to raise awareness to this issue in the first few weeks and months. It also rallied the Jewish communities around the US and around Europe, because they understood that there is hate, that this is an issue that goes beyond Israel, that there is a hate towards Jewish communities, because if you can look in the eyes of civilians, doesn't matter if they're children, men, adult men, women, elderly, and you can rip posters of kidnapped people, then you realize this is beyond Israel, beyond the conflict. It's about hate towards people for the reason, for just being Jewish at times. Although they don't realize many of those who were kidnapped were actually Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindu. It's a multi-faith issue, international issue. But they would justify it just because they were Israelis. And so it helped raising awareness, but it's still hurtful to see it, just as it is hurtful to see the hate messages we receive online, on social media.
Can you all talk about that? Have you been confronted by people either online or in person that have said they don't believe you, or that just negative, nasty things? What have you heard? What have people said to you?
I did an interview. I think it was with Fox and Friends one morning, and the clip was posted online and on Twitter, I guess, and some of the people commented on it, saying that I was a crisis actor, and that I was reading from a prompt. And I mean, it just seemed so bizarre to me that someone could actually think that, but I sort of brushed it off. I luckily haven't encountered anything face to face or from someone I knew, because I don't know if personally I could have withstood something like that.
As a result of the conflict and of the atrocities that happened on October 7, I became more active on social media, and specifically on Twitter X, which I wasn't really active before, to raise awareness, to share Omri's story, to be a voice. So both my sister and I have been active on Twitter since then, and the sort of messages you see there are just atrocious. And I mean, the milder message will just call us liars, which is also very hurtful, or actors. But you'll see nasty messages, hateful racial tropes against Jews, against us for being Israelis, references about atrocities, denial. I don't want to go too much into detail, but those messages are just dreadful, and I think we're allowing this sort of toxic discourse to take place online, and I think it amplifies the sort of toxic discourse that is taking place on the streets as well. But this is an issue that is beyond only this crisis, the hostages crisis. The issue goes beyond that, and we'll have to deal with it after this conflict. I'm now focusing on amplifying stories of hostages, of Omri, but after this conflict is, after this specific war and the hostage crisis is resolved, hopefully, we'll have to deal here in the US and all around the world with hate. And I think in Israel there is an issue as well of toxic discourse online, on social media, but it's not as severe as I see it here.
So Carmel is the daughter of my mother's cousin, Kinneret. We're very close with that part of the family. We used to go visit Carmel's grandparents, my mother's aunt and uncle, all the time. I used to have sleepovers with Carmel when I was younger. And Carmel has two brothers, Alon and Or, and they were visiting their mother, Kinneret, at Kibbutz Be'eri. They'd all been traveling around the world, Turkey, South Africa, for several weeks, and this was sort of their time to come back together. So they were staying there for Shabbat, and it was the holiday Simchat Torah the next day. Or happened to be gone to Tel Aviv that night to see friends, but Carmel was staying with her mother, and so was her brother Alon, his wife Yarden, and their 3-year-old baby girl Geffen. The next morning, they woke up to the sirens and hid in the safe room, but they started getting reports that there were people coming into the community. They heard the shooting. They weren't quite sure what was going on, and so they all hid in different places in the house. The terrorists came in and started taking them out one at a time. So we didn't learn until later what had happened to everyone. But they took Kinneret out barefoot, tied her hands together, marched her through the street, and they videotaped that and put it up on the internet. Nobody knew what had happened to her for several days, but a couple days later, I happened to be online, and just like everyone, I was refreshing, looking for news, searching for stories, trying to figure out what was going on, and I happened to find a video on the Washington Post of Kinneret with several others laying what appeared to be dead on the ground, shot in the spot in the street, barefoot, in her community. And she was wearing the same clothes she'd been wearing in the video, and so we had to call our family in Israel and say, I think they shot Kinneret.
That's how you found out?
That's how we found out.
That's
Carmel's mother. She was 69 years old. She and her family have been in Israel for 2,000 years. They were part of the Kohanim who never left Israel and stayed up in the Galilee region ever since the time of the Second Holy Temple. Their roots go back very, very far in Israel, my roots. And they didn't find Kinneret's body for about a week or two after that. They took Carmel out of the house, and we didn't know what had happened to her. And then they came in and took out Alon and Yarden and Geffen, and they put them into a car and zip-tied their hands. They started driving, Alon and his wife and their 3-year-old girl, towards Gaza. And at one point they stopped the car because they encountered an Israeli tank. And so the terrorists got out of the car and were hiding. And Alon and Yarden looked at each other and said, "We have to run." So they started running. Yarden was holding her daughter, and she realized she was too heavy. She couldn't run as fast as Alon, so she passed her daughter off to Alon and said, "You keep her safe, take care of her, go." And they split up. Yarden went and hid behind a tree, and Alon ran and hid with his daughter in a ditch all night long. Laid on top of her to keep her quiet, no food, no water. And the next morning, they were able to walk out of that ditch back to the kibbutz to safety, thank God. And sweet Geffen at one point looked at her father in the ditch and said, "You know, we really should have brought water with us." They went back the next day to look for Yarden, and they couldn't find any sign of her. Thankfully, no sign of a struggle either, because they took that as a good sign. And much like everyone else, we didn't really know what had happened to her or what had happened to Carmel. And then during the first, what I'm calling the first wave of hostage release, because I know there's going to be more, there has to be more. During the first wave of the release, we learned that Yarden was going to come home. It was on the 5th day, the second to last day.
And just remind me, Yarden and Carmel are released.
Sister-in-laws. And so Yarden was released to Alon and her daughter Geffen, and their reunion was just, I was so thankful to see that. But Carmel wasn't released, and we had hoped she would be released. We didn't know if she was safe or not. But we learned from some of the children who were released as hostages during that first wave that they were being kept with Carmel. Carmel is an occupational therapist. She was doing yoga with those kids while they were being held hostage to try to keep them sane and keep them grounded. And she passed along a message through them that I am okay, I'm alive. Don't stop fighting for me.
Are you confident that all 4 of your people are alive right now? Do you know that?
I can't be 100% certain. I know Marie was violently kidnapped alive. I know that 8 weeks ago he was alive, as confirmed by some of the hostages who were released in the previous round of release in the agreement. And thus I believe he's alive. I have nothing, and until I get evidence that he's not, I will hold to that belief and hope. But Hamas refuses the ICRC, the Red Cross, to visit the hostages, do not provide proof of life, and we still don't have any confirmation that they receive proper medication and medical care. We do know that they're being tortured. We do know of testimonies that they're being tortured, abused, violated, deprived of food and water and proper sanitary conditions, which is why every second that they're there and we're here and they're not with us, risk their lives. And we are tormented mentally, hostages of Hamas mentally, but they are tormented mentally and physically, which is why we keep going around in Israel, in the US, around the world, to tell policymakers to do what they need to do to bring them home.
What have the last 4 months been like for you and your family?
So I'll start where Moshe just finished, saying that since October 7th, I don't want to say that we're being held as hostages, because they are, but our life does not belong to us anymore. It's, in a way, and it's very sad for me to say, but Hamas is running my life, because since then we're dealing, the first few weeks or even more than a month, we were running around trying to understand how come they just disappear, you know? We got this phone call, they're not there, and what else? Where can they be? I have 2 kids, 8 and 11, And during that horrible Saturday, October 7th, around noontime, when we understand that something horrible is going on, so I call my brother and I tell him if he could come and pick up the kids so they won't be around us when we, I don't know, watch the news or something. And they stayed with my family for the next 48 hours, and then we went to bring them back, and we had to explain what's going on. So we had a conversation with a psychologist, and she told us what kind of words we should use or should not use. And we told them that there's a war, and their two amazing and very much loved uncles are missing as for now, but we told them also not to worry because we have a strong army and they're going to go and find them. And then my 11 years old daughter looks at me and she said, "Mom, they're not going to find Eitan, never ever." So I asked, "Why, Gali, are you saying it?" And she said, "Eitan is the best hide-and-seek player in the world." So my life is, on one hand, trying to do everything I can to advocate and talk and convince and ask for help for anyone that can do something. So there's going to be a second hostage deal on one hand. On the other hand, I have to deal with my two kids waking up in the middle of the night screaming that we have terrorists at home and they're pointing their guns towards them. And every morning, the first thing they ask is if there's a deal already, and how come the answer is no, and what is the government doing? And when I told them that I was coming to the States this week, so my daughter, she said, "You know what? First they took my two uncles, and now you have to go. Why isn't the government or someone else bringing them back and doing something?" So our life is a huge tragedy. I think the best picture that describes what we're going through is this one. This is my husband, Amos, and this picture was taken last September during his birthday party. This is our small little garden, Yair and Eitan. And now they've done the same picture on December 2023, the same place, same chairs, empty. And this emptiness and this tragedy and this, I don't know even what kind of word can describe. This is running our whole life. We cannot work. When we sit down around the table trying to have dinner, the first thing that comes up to our mind is, okay, so we have food on the table and what's going on with them? And I don't know, winter started in Israel, so we're cold and we're wearing something, or it's raining and we're staying inside safe and secure, and what's going on with them? And all we hear are about those horrible conditions, so we're asking a question that unfortunately we know the answer. So in a way, it's us, the 136 hostages families, it's all the Israeli society, it's all the Jewish community around the world. I think it's even bigger than this, as a humanitarian thing of people who know that we, the Israelis, were targeted first, but this terror organization is not only against us. We were the first ones, but then they would go to others. This is a humanitarian thing, and we're just the face of it right now.
I am beyond hopeful and optimistic that we will see Carmel again. Hearing that she was being kept with other hostages who were released. Yarden was released already, thank God. I remain hopeful every day that we will see Carmel at home and healthy again soon. I'm terrified of her return and having to tell her that she's coming to a family where her mother has been killed. It's been very difficult on her siblings, but I'm hopeful that she comes back and that every country around the world does everything in their power to get these hostages released.
I know they're coming back. I know it has to be soon. I don't see any other option. And I know it's going to be super hard for them know what had happened, for Yair to know that 100 people in his community was taken. Out of 400, 100 didn't come back. I know it's going to be devastating for him to know that his whole kibbutz was burned, but I know that they're coming and it has to be now, and I feel that they're going to be strong enough to go through the process of healing and becoming stronger and starting over.
I think as families we have two roles. The first role is to project hope and belief that this crisis can be solved, and that will allow the public to rally behind us, to continue supporting us in the way it has been supporting us, and more. And our second role is to demand policymakers to find a solution. And because we come with the hope that they will return home, we can demand the policymakers to find a solution. And we know a solution was found for the first wave, and so there are ways to find solution for the second waves. There's not going to be any deal that is easy or good for Israel. We're living, sadly, Hamas have the upper end, and we are negotiating with our head in the mouth of a tiger, in a way. But we first need to bring them home. Whatever needs to do that is reasonable and viable, and after that, we'll continue to confront that tiger as much as we can until we dismantle it. So it will not threaten us any longer. But that's what we demand from policymakers, and we are armed with our hope that they can return home alive.
It's been how many days?
117.
We've talked about the fact that there are people who do not believe you. You also talked about the fact that you feel like there are people who have forgotten your families.
It was incredibly disorienting on October 7th to be in the United States. I was at a park with my daughters. They're 5. My older two are 5 and 3. And everyone's just sitting there laughing, having a good time, talking about, what they're doing for dinner or where they're going that night. Meanwhile, I want to shake everyone and say, do not realize what is going on in Israel this very moment. Do you not realize that people have been taken hostage, that people are being murdered? It was such a wildly disorienting feeling, and that disorientation has just gotten worse because there are people who have been held 117 days. Our families have been held 117 days as hostages in Gaza, and it feels like the whole world is just forgotten, and it's on to the next story in the news cycle. But these people are living daily in fear. Their lives are at risk. Starvation, violence. I mean, the worst kinds of mental and physical torture, and we cannot simply forget about them. That is our job, is to bring them home and to make sure everyone remembers that these people are still there. So when you're comfortable in your bed, or you're sitting down to a meal, or you're getting in your car, I'm constantly thinking, well, Carmel's not getting into her car. Carmel's not laying in her bed. She doesn't have a warm meal. And everything is in pursuit of bringing them home.
I'm not sure if I would use the word forgotten. I think that there has been so many conflicts around the Middle East, and for many people around the world, it's just one more, and they don't even take the time to read or discover that this is a different thing. And for them, the hostages is just a word, and the 136 is just a number. And what we're trying to do is to put a picture and a story to those numbers, and once again to say that now it's Carmel, it's Eitan, it's Yair, it's Omri, but it could have been them. And I think that people are just moving on to the next thing and saying, you know what, it's Israel's problem. They should have solved it before, or you should look at the wider context, or all those kind of horrible things, without understanding that those people were kidnapped out of their beds. And it's not because they voted to the right-wing party or to the left-wing party. This has nothing to do. Actually, if we're talking about all the four of them, so we're talking about communities around the border that truly believed in coexistence. And in this community, in the community of the Nir Oz, there were many, many, many Palestinians from Gaza coming every day to work inside the community. And many members of this community would go to the border every day with their car and get kids or other Palestinians from Gaza who need medical treatment, and they would drive them to the hospitals in Israel. They would do the service and wait with them while they're getting treated, and bring them food, and then bring them back to the border so they can have a good and proper medical treatment. So this has nothing to do with a political conflict. These are human beings. This is a humanitarian thing. So for me, what's most frightening than forgetting is putting the story within a political context, and it's not the case. And this is one of our struggles.
You were all talking earlier about how some folks you've heard people say that Israelis deserve this. When you hear people say that, and you are waiting for Omri, how does that make you feel?
I focus on my mission. I don't let toxic people and the toxic discourse to make me forget about the mission of bringing them home. These people, at the end of the day, for me, are insignificant. If they would have come in good faith, they would not have approached this subject in such manner. So what I do is focusing on the good, on those who support us, on those who show up in rallies and demonstrations, those who send thousands of beautiful messages online, those who come and volunteer. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum was established on October 8th by the families, and since then there are, in Israel, there are 90 chapters around the world, and they're all based on good people volunteering for us, the families. So I focus on those volunteers who support us and want to make sure that these stories, the stories of Omri, of Eitan, of Carmel, of so many other hostages, those who returned, those who are still there, are being shared with the public, being shared through the media, through social media, being shared in community events, being shared with policymakers.
You can't stay silent. It is so important for everyone to speak up about this issue. It is so important to have people's support. Policymakers won't do anything if they don't feel that the public is behind them, if they don't feel that the public is pushing them to get these hostages back. And we need our elected officials across the world to help make this happen, to get these hostages out of Gaza. And so don't stay silent when you see some misinformation on social media, or you overhear somebody talking at a party, or you see somebody ripping down a poster. Don't stay silent. Everyone out there can do their part. You can buy one of the dog tags to support us and wear it. You can volunteer. You can just say something to your neighbors. Don't stay silent. That's my message.
I think one of the most important things for me is making people understand that when we talk about bringing them back home, we're talking about sticking to one of the values which for me is the most important values, which is the value of life. This is one of the basic values in Judaism, in Christianity, in the Islam, in many cultures and religions around the world. We are choosing life, and maybe this is one of the main things that makes us so different than the Hamas terror organization, because while we sanctify life, they sanctify death. While we dream of building a country and flourish in the desert, this is what these communities are doing in the Gaza border. This is a desert place. While we try to build and plan for a better future and educate ourselves, so the terror organizations are educating their kids to be the next terrorists. And when this community was invaded on October 7th, we looked at the security cameras and we saw that part of the 1,000 terrorists that entered to the kibbutz were women and children, and those children had weapons with them, and of course all the signs and the uniform of the Hamas. So for me, it's important to say that it's not only, it's bringing the hostages, because bringing the hostages is one of the biggest signs that the value of life is stronger than the value of death and the desire of these people to destroy us.
For me is, don't normalize terrorism, don't normalize Hamas and their accomplices' ideology, don't normalize hostage taking. Speak up, be present, support us, the families, look above the political discourse, supposedly the wider discourse about this war, and reach out to your officials, elected officials, and tell them why Omri needs to return home, why all the other hostages who are still held captive need to return home.
It's sort of, again, I use the word disorienting a lot, but just, like, we joke sometimes, we talk about our lives, we were sharing pictures of our kids together, and yet the thing that connects us all is that our family has been violently kidnapped from their homes. It's such a weird place to be, and a weird kinship to have formed with other people. And it sometimes makes me feel like when we talk about just our lives and normal things, like it's trite, like it's insignificant. Like, what am I doing having these conversations? And yet, as Dahlia said, we value life. That is our driving force, is life. And so I think in these conversations, we're imagining a life where all of our family comes back, where things are back to normal, where we're happy again. And we don't have to think about these horrible things. That is our hope and our optimism shining through in every conversation.
There is I think Israel has been delegitimized for a long time, the state of Israel, by a certain segment of the population. A different segment of the population simply hate Jews. And they found an alliance with those who support radical Islamist ideology, those two segments from different sides of the political map. So I expected that to happen, but at the same time, as I said earlier, let's focus on those who can see beyond the hate. Let's amplify those voices, because I think the silent majority does view this as an issue that needs to be solved, does view what Hamas has done, Hamas and their accomplices, not only Hamas, has done on October 7, has been horrendous and against any principles of acceptable principles. So I focus on them rather than on those who are loud, who may be loud, but I don't think they represent the majority of people around the world. If I can add why it's important to interview, because some of the hostages they receive a radio transmitter and heard family members fighting for them. We know Omri learned that Lishai, my sister, and their 2 daughters, Ronnie and Alma, survived October 7 because they did not know that until the 50th day of the war, just because we interviewed, and he caught one of those interviews through another hostage who shared it with him. And I'm sure this is not only one story. This is why we keep shouting everywhere we go, and we keep sharing it with the media. This is why the media has to continue to amplify these voices until this crisis is solved, because it gives them hope.